We're on number 19.
20.
My bad, sorry. Even better. Number 20, CDBG, Consolidated Plan. Actually, 2024, it's a Consolidated Plan, the 2021 Annual Action Plan. Welcome, Ben.
All right, so good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. So the item before you was before you back in June, and it's back before you with a little tweak on item regarding recommendation C. So before you tonight is really to conduct a public hearing to receive comments for the 2024 Consolidated Plan, the 2021 Action Plan, analysis of impediments for fair housing choice, to consider the adoption of the resolution approving and authorizing staff to submit these documents to HUD, allocating $666,861 in CDBG funds for 2021, and then consider approving staff to move forward with preparing and accepting application for the CARES Act CDBG CV funding and appointing 2 council members to participate on an ad hoc CDBG CV review and recommendation committee. So, and with the purpose of the HUD money, when it comes to this community development block, is basically to provide decent housing, a suitable living environment, and to expand economic opportunity for low income and moderate income persons. So that's the basis of the HUD CDBG program. And so with that, I'm going to power through this a little bit with prior review, but please stop me and I could go through it in more detail depending on what level anybody's interest. And so, so with that, we're designated as an entitlement city, and so with that, we get a formula-based CDBG funding every year. And so, typically that starts in January through applications we send out, and then we go through an application review process, and then we make a recommendation and work through the HUD guidelines in order to be here before you today. So, so as stated earlier, the priority for the funding is for low and moderate income individuals. There's a basis for that, and so 59,500 is what that threshold is in Yuba City based on the 2019 Yuba City MSA income limits. So with this, there's a requirement for that 5-year consolidated plan. The plan was expired this summer, and so with that, we've developed a new plan, and with that, a proposed annual action plan that then designates this funding to comply with that consolidated plan. So, and with that, there's an analysis of impediments for fair housing choice, which looks to see if there's any sort of barrier or any specific issues in our region or in our area that's impediments for fair housing. So we developed the 5-year consolidated plan. Basically, these are the priorities before you. They're not specific or in order. We've designated them as all those priorities. And so anything in this, so when this funding comes through annually, we're basically trying to hit besides CDBG's goals of having it be for low income and for housing and the betterment of the environment for low income individuals. The CON plan basically establishes our own citywide priorities. So as discussed this year, the 2021 allocation is $666,000 and change. There's particulars regarding the use of the funds. Only 20% is a maximum for administration, 15% to be allocated for public services. And then there's some thresholds with direct, based on these census tracts where the money has to be specifically within these certain areas in order to qualify. So quick rundown through the past processes. So for this year, there was a notice early in the winter, January, February timeframe. There was a public workshop on February 19th. Funding applications were in March. Staff committee reviewed the applications March 26th. People prepared draft consolidated plan, and then we came to council in June. And so at the regular meeting in June, there was input from council and recognition recognition of the COVID and economic situation that can we relook at any of the funding just to see where there's mutual benefits for city needs, and then where we could leverage other opportunities that maybe we can match the funding allocation to a city need. And so with that, there was some discussion about Fire Station 1, a roof repair, unanticipated roof repair, and then also Fire Station 2 needed ADA improvement and various other work at Fire Station 2, with public facility improvements being in our con plan and a priority for the city. And so staff went back, we worked with the fire department, and due to the schedule for the roof, it was already bid and contractors were basically ready to go. It wouldn't meet this funding criteria. For this funding, once we approve it tonight, it's really another 3-month process before it goes back to HUD, gets approved, comes back to us, and then we go out through a federal bid process for 45 days, which puts you right in the middle of winter time. It gets complicated. So the roof was pretty much out the door for this round. The Fire Station 2, that one got complicated because it's not in a designated census tract. And then the particulars of the ADA improvements not being necessarily readily available to the public, with it being closed, it was a little tricky. And so when we looked at that and we talked to HUD basically told us it didn't meet their national objective and wouldn't follow into that criteria for applicability. But with that, when we were there was definitely a need for equipment, especially with potential ties to the COVID situation, where there's rooms for storage, decontamination when firefighters are responding to calls, where that area could be stored, and there's a mutual benefit for an area for that turnout. And so we think that would be a potential project for the CDBG CV money. And so not necessarily for the standard CDBG money, but with the CV. And then also we looked at the current CIP and where we could fit. And so you could definitely, it's hard to find something that meets the goals of HUD with low income and housing as the goal for CDBG, and then also meet the timelines and the processes. And with that, we're looking for, we definitely recognize that there's safety projects and small other projects around the city that maybe we could find this $25,000, $50,000. But due to the time frame and the noticing, where the CDBG CV money, we're going to be wanting to issue applications to try to spend that money. And then with new CDBG money rolling in with the process starting in January, we think the best way to proceed is to take input for sure, but to move forward with the plan today with approval on how this has been noticed and how it's been approved. And then work internally with staff going forward for any of those small projects that meet the goals of the con plan and the CDBG, and make sure we push to implement those in the next rounds that are coming. And so with this round, it's really deja vu. It's what was proposed before. The difference in that is that Regional Housing Authority has reached out to us and said, since June, there's been unanticipated, unexpected costs related to the public housing on Richland, at Richland Housing, due to needed sewer lateral repairs. And so instead of using the funds just for one apartment rehab, they're asking the potential to amend their application for the same public housing, but to basically use it towards the sewer lateral repair, which would benefit 7 units for that amount. And so with this is the dollar amount here is what you're seeing for the allocation of this year's funds with as broken out. And I could definitely go into detail that more. And in addition to that, this money with the criteria that's basically you're supposed to spend it within 1 year. So you get it, you're supposed to spend it by June 30th. They start beating you up if you don't spend it within that year, and they usually give you a little bit of a grace period up to 2 years. And so with that, we have some old money sitting in a 2018 owner-occupied rehab program that there's about $25,000 in there that we think would be better used, and then it would also meet the need of regional housing. And so that's where the recommendation would, it does us a benefit because it gets it off the books of being the old money, and then it also benefits the Regional Housing Authority's project application with it matching what their request was. So that's with the first transfer. And the second transfer is there's old money that was slated from admin. So every year we take this generic 20% admin cut for time, administration. And so where that money doesn't get spent, we're requesting this $55,000 amount to be put into the ADA sidewalk project. And so to go back to a little bit about this transfer in the total amount for the Regional Housing Authority is there's some confusion. I believe last time when I talked about the transfer from the $25,000 from this owner occupied rehab program, that is a city program. That's a loan program. Basically, there's money that goes into this. There's money that goes into this pot, and then people can apply for it, and we give them a low interest loan with long-term repayment for low-income individuals, and they pay that back over time. And so, so the community development grant money, this is a development block grant, and so $666,000 comes in. But with this, over at various times in the past, so in 2018, we've put a little bit of money into this separate loan program. But the standard $666,000 CDBG money is grant money, one-time money that goes off. But since it's not being, since that's a city program, this owner-occupied program, that's not getting it, that's with this last year and a half, we haven't received any applications for that loan money. That money's sitting in there and starting to get stale with CDBG telling us we have to have it spent. So to add a little bit to that, and then the loans, it's a little difficult because with the money being low mod for low moderate income folks, you get a lot of nonprofits that apply for it, and you get such as HUD agencies. And so my understanding is that so for a HUD agency, a property like RHA, there's deed restrictions where they're not allowed to go into a debt service, or it's complicated to go into a loan for that. And then you have just nonprofits that aren't interested in taking on a loan or a debt service like Freed or Habitat for Humanity. So adding a new project. So we can add a new project. So if right now we want to say, hey, Ben, I got $50,000, $25,000, you need to do a new project. You know, we can probably find something that's, hey, let's go put some new handrails at Fire Station 1. You know, would it be a rush? You know, you'd probably have it because it's not planned out. It's not quite figured out how it's going to line up. It would match the intent of our priorities, but it wouldn't really match the intent of the CDBG money being for housing and for low moderate use. And so I could do that. To be straightforward, what would that do? It would probably make about a 45-day delay, because I'd have to go find this project, make sure it applies, renotice it, come back to you guys again, or amend the plan and then move forward. And so where I'm at is that with the intent of the funds for the low mod and the housing, and the applications being out for this year and being so close to the CDBG CV money coming out, and the next year with the January release basically of the new money, it might be better served to work with the internal departments and really nail down what project ties into their future goals. How do we make sure it applies, and how does it move forward with it, so we're not holding up this remaining $600,000 plus projects. So here's some detail regarding the city staff program. It just talks about the 133,000. We haven't hit that number rarely often. I don't know if ever. I know finance talks to us every year about not hitting our funding goal. And so, but we definitely look at that and we utilize it. And then anything, money that's left over, we allocate next year, and typically into projects to get it off the books. $100,000 is the maximum amount, 15% to the homeless consortium, to the various uses there on the right. And then we have the recommended funding levels with the transfers. And so with the asterisks next to them, you have the $50,000 amount and then the $279 with ADA sidewalks with the money coming in. And so CDBG CV funds. And so this is with the CARES Act. $392,000 was distributed through a formula. With that, there's, as we talked, there's a lot of particulars regarding the coronavirus and meeting CDBG. And so with that, the city, there's a deadline to allocate this by August 2021. So we have till next year to determine how we're going to spend it. And then you'll have the year or the 2 years to spend it. And so right now there's been a lot of different ideas with the particulars on how to, where that money could be the most usefully spent. And so with that, we're proposing that you, with our recommendation C, is that you authorize staff to go out and start the application process, to start advertising for it and receive input, but then also appoint 2 city council members onto this review ad hoc committee so we could work through some of the needs and bring a recommendation back to the council with the various needs that come through from fire additional building space for fire department needs, from economic development, small grants to help with COVID related issues, to there's some interest in there right now that we have. I believe Diana mentioned 962 delinquent utility accounts, around $350,000, and there's options where small grants could go to pay up to 6 months worth of utility payments that are delinquent. And so there's a mutual benefit there where the money helps the constituents and then it also comes back to the city. And so there's a lot of those various priorities out there. And so with that, we're looking to develop that ad hoc committee so we could talk about it, kind of work through it, and then come back to council with a recommendation. So with that, I'm recommending items A, B, and C, and be happy to answer any questions.
Can you go back to your, thank you, Ben. Can you go back to your detail slides, please? And there was one reference on the far, go down one more, yeah. Under consultant services, could you just explain what COC coordinator is for me?
COC coordinator. It's.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry. Yeah.
So,
Scott Thurman? That's Scott Thurman Consulting.
so it's not for the executive director position, it's for the Thurman Consulting that provides services for.
Okay. And then I do think there's probably more discussion in regards to your bolded deal on the executive director salary. I know that I have made myself pretty clear in regards to monies that we are allocating to CDBG go towards direct services rather than staff. So I don't know what you mean by there is ongoing discussion. Are you looking for more direction from this council, or help me understand that one?
So right now you have very good eyes, Mr. Boomberger, Councilman Boomberger. This is an old slide that I didn't take off the bold on that, and so that's probably from June. And so right now we haven't received any direction more than what their application was. So that $100,000 is specifically for those 4 items below, and basically anything to do with the executive director's salary would need to come back to City Council. They've requested that, and the plan is to bring that back to City Council for consideration on how you fund it. But with this allocation right now, it's specifically for consultant services, $15,276 for Scott Thurman, coordinated entry for the front desk at $7,635, the rapid rehousing, and then emergency shelter operations.
Okay, so there isn't any of that $100,000 that's currently programmed for the executive director.
Correct. So their scope of their application is just for those 4, and if we approve it, they will have to spend that money on that scope.
Okay, then I think it was your second or third slide that talked about the eligible programs. There you go. So again, and this goes back to the work that Councilman Shaw and I have been doing with the budget. And, you know, the city of Yuba City gets to coordinate the distribution of the CDBG funds that are allocated to us based on whatever formulas are out there. And I think that in the past, and I'm going to speak from personal experience as well, I'm not sure that that was completely opened up to staff for their use. And in talking with some folks on staff, I find that perhaps CDBG funds weren't opened up or the application for CDBG funds wasn't necessarily as well known as it possibly could have been. So I'm encouraged by the fact that you're moving in that direction. I agree with where you're headed with this cycle because we're down the road, but I would certainly think that as a city, we need to take care of ourselves, and we definitely have the need to do so. So I think opening up the process and making sure that our city staff and our city departments are fully engaged in their ability to apply for CDBG funds is important. I understand the programmatic portion where certain percentages have to go in certain places, but I would love to see police and fire take advantage of the CDBG program where it's appropriate. It sounds like you're addressing some of that. And that's the public facility construction and rehab. It's not limited to public safety. And then obviously economic development. We talked about that earlier this evening. I know there's some parameters there. If we have $50K of available money, which I think I heard you say towards the end of your presentation, is that correct?
So I say this correctly. Right now, this is how we're proposing to allocate this year's rounds. Mm-hmm. There's existing 25,000 in the owner occupied that we would like to move to get it off the books, and there's also 55,000 in the admin fund that we'd like to get off the books. So old money, we have close to $80,000 that we would like to shift out of there to move over and do something with that. City, the ADA sidewalk, we have 1,300 curb ramps around town that are out of compliance, and so it's a win-win for the Public Works Department and the city where we're reducing our liability, fixing these improvements, and they're readily constructible. There's not a lot of hiccups or environmental issues with getting the money off the books. So I don't know if that answers your question a little bit.
I think I'm going
to. But any of the money is technically available to shift around.
Okay. And again, might sound like I'm contradicting myself because I'm going to say, hey, look, we need to take care of the city, but I also know we have a bit of a homeless problem, and I also know that there is some work afoot to relocate some homeless areas, and I guess this might be a question to both of you, and one of you can give me an answer, is would this money be able to support any of the efforts that the county currently is undertaking in regards to RV parking and in establishing another place of rest for the homeless?
Yeah, I'd have to defer to Ben, but I think that if it's COVID related, you could potentially utilize the COVID CDBG funds in terms of providing camping spaces for them to be socially distanced and have space. If it's not COVID related, then I would defer to Ben as to which funding source out of this we would be able to utilize.
So Jaspreet might have to back me up on this one, but we looked into this earlier on because it talked about down on 2nd Street and potential use. I think with the low moderate, it had to be for a project that had to be long term, and so the answer was yes, with the asterisk that it couldn't be. It had to be infrastructure. So it had to be, okay, you put the rock down, you put in something permanent in. It's supposed to be 20 years, I believe. Was it 20 plus years? And so, yeah, generally, yes. But we would just have to review it to make sure it kind of qualified under this permanent infrastructure.
Okay.
They don't want to see you wipe it the next year, right before the audit.
Okay. Well, that's for now. That's all I have. Thanks.
Through the mayor, I think it was a really well presentation for the complexity of what you have to deal with. In these funds, there's a very specific requirement with the feds, and it has to be low and moderate and permanent and rapid rehousing. And so when you understand that those are the primary uses for these monies, I think as a city, if we are utilizing for infrastructure within the city or any other projects within the city, we have to assure that it's primarily used for low and moderate income persons. You can't generalize it because it won't, the feds don't tend to allow for these kinds of funds to be utilized in those ways. But I think that your plan, it gives direction, and if you change projects, then you're going to have to do that whole thing that you outlined, 30, 45-day, reshift it. The consultant that we have from the Homeless Consortium is alike to similar to what our staff, how they take 20% off the top to run the projects, to assure that the projects are in compliance, that we're meeting the requirements by the feds, and that no audits and everything's going to go well. That's what this consultant works with the consortium to help assure that all the projects that are being funded through CDBG are meeting all those guidelines. And there is monthly invoices on top of that with attachments of evidence that those expenses are tied to the projects. So if, for example, like Hands of Hope is a coordinated entry location, and they're providing services to so many homeless individuals and utilize staff that they're paying under our funding, but paying it directly through them, they are having to track all that information that staff is utilizing their time, their money, and their efforts to support the homeless community. So I think I'm going a little bit more into detail of the subject because it seems possible in our minds to maybe do some changes as we would like to, but I just like to focus on those areas that CDBG funding is completely focused on low and moderate incomes persons. And the main goal is for permanent housing. That's what they're hoping, that people find homes and are established in those homes. So that's what these funds are set up for.
I appreciate the explanation, but through my own research, CDBG funds aren't exclusive for low-income housing. You can use them, as they talked about, for improvements that provide services to low-income areas, and that's where the census tracts come into play. You can only do certain projects in those areas that are designated as low-income, but it doesn't have to be exclusively for the benefit of low-income housing. It's supporting low-income people.
Correct. I didn't say it in the same fashion. I'm reading exactly here, primarily. It's not exclusive, it's not 100%, primarily. It could be, some sort of, low income, moderate, could be up in the north area of District 1. We could build something out there if we wanted to. That's the usable amount for this monies. But I just wanted to refocus that that's where these funds come from.
I think a classic example is the ADA sidewalk. Anybody can use that.
Exactly.
There you go.
Right.
Through the mayor. Ben, first of all, thank you. And I know you're thinking, oh God, here comes the disappointment. It's not with you. You have done a great job, so let me start saying that from the start. The history behind this and this program, I think, is what brings a lot of the animosity that you feel from some of the council. And the fact of the matter is we need to have those projects that benefit the most people that need it within our city. And we talk about ADA. We talk about, I see up there's the playground equipment replace. I mean, we've done that throughout the city that has benefit our handicapped community as well. It transcends to make Yuba City a better community. I think where it goes back, and this is just my personal opinion, and again, you're doing a great job, Ben. Okay, breathe. But I believe that this has been used in the past with not the greatest clarity, with not the greatest transparency. And it got to be, for lack of better terms, a little cliquish group. I'll give to you and you because I like you, but I'm not going to tell you and invite you to the party because I like you guys better. I think that residual is there. This year is kind of a fix it, get this stuff off the books, get it moving forward. But I've stated it before and I will continue to state it. When it comes to RHA, I want to support the projects they bring that benefit multiple people. So I'm glad that they are willing to amend and change from a single apartment to fixing the sewer line, which will keep about 7 or 8 families in apartments versus just a single. To me, it's about getting more bang for the buck for these grants that come in. And I would like to continue to see this utilized, marketed to where people that are eligible can use this and not the same 2 or 3 over and over, because quite honestly, we've got a homeless population that creates issues throughout our city that we've got to figure out solutions to. We've got a low-income housing problem that we've got to find solutions to. When you look at $666,000, we have an awful lot of issues and $666,000. So when I spend $1, I want it benefiting the most people possible. Every organization does great work, but if we're going to spend $50,000 or $10,000, I want it reaching as many people as we can. So with this, I thank you for threading that needle. Again, my frustration is not with you. I'm looking forward to the next cycle to where we've reached out to our departments, other organizations to realize this is a program that can be utilized by more than 3 or 4 organizations. And so I just appreciate your work.
Okay, thank you. Sir? You good? All right. I'd like to but I would like to, no. I'm out of here.
We got a house for you.
I'd like to address item number C, the ad hoc committee recommended for CDBG CV funding. Before we can even make a motion and approve A, B, and C, we have to have a couple names to attach to that. And care to know if anybody might be interested in participating?
More than happy to.
I appreciate that, Mr. Cardoza. I think you'd be a great addition to that team. Actually, we don't have a team yet. I knew she'd be reaching for the button.
Oh, sorry, I thought Vice Mayor was going to go in there for the dive. I thought,
No, I'm volunteering you.
oh,
There you go.
I was like, finally, I thought Vice Mayor and I were going to go together to play in the same sandbox.
Well, you're doing that right now.
I love that with Cardoza.
Appreciate you guys who do a good job, and thank you very much for that.
All right.
Okay, so we do have item C be part of the motion for Council Member Espindola and Council Member Cardoza to be a part of that when we get to that point. If there's no further discussion, do we have any? Let me see. We need to do a public hearing. Refresh my memory. We already do that?
It is.
Did already do it? Not yet. All right. So we're going to open the public hearing on the item. Do we have anything?
No, you did not.
We do not. I don't see anything here. So we will close that. And unless there's any further discussion, we're at motion time.
Mr. Mayor,
Sir.
I'd like to use staff's recommendation of the Community Development Block Grant 2020-2024, Consolidated Plan 2020-21 Annual Action Plan, and list an intimate fair housing choice. Recommendations A, B, and C. Oh, and appointing Councilwoman Espindola and myself on the ad hoc committee.
Thank you and thank you. We have a second.
Through the mayor.
Yes, sir.
Before we have a second, we don't need to approve agenda item or A because that was conducted public hearing. We already did that, so we
Oh,
just
there you go. I'm looking
we need to
at
move
letters, not
approve
the-
B and C.
All right. So that's fine. Anybody second that? B and C?
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Nothing. Thank you. That's an inattentive financial guy
Read
talking
it
right there.
twice.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
Comments appreciated.
Appreciate it. You survived.